$0 a year, and this kid's family owns their farm outright. Look at him. One hand holds a crumpled bill, the other a loaf of warm bread. No salary, no 401k, no credit score. None. Now you're sitting at a kitchen table across the county, oil lamp flickering. A 28-year-old man counts $100 bills onto a hand-sewn cloth. He's paying cash for his second farm. You have a master's degree and a good job, and you cannot do that. Across from you sits Eli, plainly dressed, watching your face with a small, dry smile. "You look tired," he says. He doesn't mean sleep. So here's the question that should bother you. How do families with no salaries, no credit cards, and no college degrees keep outbuilding, outgrowing, and outlasting the modern middle class? They look poor on paper. Once you see the wealth they've quietly built, with no banks, no ads, no debt, you will never look at your own money the same way again. The community rule. You probably think the Amish way is just a quaint custom. Simple folks, plain clothes, buggies on the road, a charming holdout, but that reading misses the whole machine. What looks like a quirk is actually a rule, and the rule does a job. Every choice about horses, buttons, and telephones exists to keep the community tight, not nostalgia. When they refuse a car, they aren't hating engines. They're protecting the shape of a town where you still need your neighbor. The custom is the glue, and glue that works leaves a mark. If these rules were quietly strangling them, the numbers would shrink. They do the opposite. Since the 1980s, the Amish population in North America has doubled roughly every 20 years, making them one of the fastest-growing groups in the whole country. The Young Center at Elizabethtown College in Pennsylvania counted about 400,000 baptized members in 2023, up from roughly 100,000 in 1991. Quadrupled. Sit with that. A people with no smartphones, no dating apps, no viral recruitment campaign is outgrowing nearly everyone. Most modern movements would sell a kidney for that curve. The Amish got it by telling people to stay home and have supper together. Picture a gray buggy clopping down a Pennsylvania road while a sports car blasts past with the bass shaking its mirrors. You'd bet on the car. Faster, louder, richer. But the buggy is winning the long game, one quiet field at a time. The car will be scrapped in 15 years. The buggy family will have 9 kids. Honestly, it's a little unsettling how well it works. So the custom isn't decoration, it's the engine of a boom. Which raises the obvious next question, the one nobody expects to matter. How does a group that bans banks, refuses credit cards, and skips the stock market end up with real money in the bank? And that starts with Chapter 2. Picture a young Amish man opening a furniture shop with no loan. You probably think this is just a quaint custom, some charming little rule about avoiding banks, a simple quirk. And it looks that way, honestly. The beards, the buggies, the pencil in the notebook. But the no-debt habit isn't decoration. It works as a community rule, a machine everyone runs the same way, and that machine has an output you can measure. Here's the reversal nobody expects. You'd assume the group refusing credit cards and startup loans would fail more often, not less. They have no venture capital, no line of credit, none of the tools we treat as oxygen. And yet, Eric Vesner found in 2010 that the Amish business failure rate sits around 5%, while roughly 50% of mainstream American small businesses fold within 5 years. Let that land slowly. The people who won't touch a bank loan fail 1/10 as often as the people who live on them. Why? Because without borrowed money, you can't overreach. You build the shop with cash you already have, or your neighbors raise the frame in a weekend and you owe them your own weekends back. There's no monthly payment quietly eating you alive. And here Eli gives the slow blink, sets down his lantern, and writes monthly payment in his little notebook, pencil stub scratching, like he's pinning a strange beetle he intends to study once and forget. The whole thing runs on patience, which is a resource the modern world spent long ago. A buggy rolls down the shoulder at 8 miles an hour, while a lifted truck blares past, driver leaning on the horn. The buggy does not speed up. It has nowhere it needs to be by Tuesday. So the low failure rate isn't luck, and it isn't holiness. It's arithmetic, enforced by a whole community that agreed on the same rules before you were born. Which leaves one nagging question. If the money isn't the point, what exactly is all this discipline protecting? And that's Chapter 3. So isn't Chapter 3 just another quaint Amish custom, like refusing zippers? Not quite. You probably picture Gelassenheit as a soft idea about being humble and yielding, and it is that sort of, but that's the surface. The sharper truth is that Gelassenheit works as a hard community rule, not a gentle mood. Yielding to the group isn't just spiritual manners, it's a mechanism. When you fold yourself into the community folds right back around you, and that folding does something an insurance company would envy. Consider what happens in Lancaster County when a family's barn burns down. There's no contractor, no loan, no waiting 6 weeks for an estimate. Instead, somewhere between 150 and 200 neighbors show up at dawn with hammers. And by sundown, a full barn stands where there was a scorched hole that morning. One day, the contractor cost isn't reduced, it's erased entirely, because nobody bills anybody. Gelassenheit is the reason it works. You yielded to the group last spring, so the group shows up for you this spring. It's a safety net woven out of showing up. Picture the difference on a single road. A buggy rolls past at 8 miles an hour, calm as a pond, while modern traffic honks and lurches beside it. The buggy isn't behind. The buggy just already paid its premium. In labor at somebody else's barn, years ago. Eli watches this for a while, unimpressed by the honking, and mutters that his neighbors are cheaper than an insurance deductible and better company. You might call that arrangement a kind of mutual coverage plan. Eli slow blinks. He sets down his lantern, licks his pencil stub, and writes "mutual coverage plan" in the little notebook. The way you'd log a beetle you never intend to keep. So the discipline isn't protecting money. It's protecting the barn raising itself. The ability to summon 200 people who owe you nothing but show up anyway. Which raises the obvious follow-up. How on earth do you keep 200 people that reliable for generations? And that's Chapter 4. So you'd guess Chapter 4 is just one quaint Amish habit. But that's not the strange part. You picture it as a custom, a folk quirk passed down like a favorite recipe. Simple. That's the myth, and it's wrong in an interesting way. The sharper truth is that the custom works as a rule, not a mood. It binds people because everyone agreed to be bound. You don't opt out on Tuesday because you slept poorly. And Chapter 4 is the machine that makes 200 people reliable across generations. It runs on shared work, shared church, and shared consequences. When the rule holds, the whole settlement compounds like interest. And yes, Eli slow blinks at the word interest, sets down his lantern, and writes it in his notebook with a pencil stub. Here's the proof that this is a system, not a vibe. Amish families in Ohio's Holmes County have built the largest contiguous Amish settlement in the world. By 2019, that region was pulling in an estimated $500 million a year from tourism and crafts. $500 million? That's not a hobby. That's a functioning economy run by people who won't wire your house. The rules that keep 200 neighbors dependable also keep a whole county productive. Reliability scales. Picture a horse-drawn buggy easing down a county road in Holmes. A pickup blows past, radio thumping, driver late for something. The buggy does not speed up. The buggy has never been late in its life. The modern world roars around it, and the buggy simply continues, at the pace of a walking horse, arriving exactly when it planned to. That calm is the whole trick. When someone mentions the tourists financing all this with a monthly subscription to some travel app, Eli blinks once, sets down the lantern, and quietly adds "subscription" to the notebook, filing it beside the other insects, which leaves one honest question hanging. If the rule works this well, what actually happens to a person who breaks it? And that's Chapter 5. The opt-out. That's the thing everyone squints at. You probably picture it as a quaint little Amish quirk, a religious hang-up about paperwork, something charming and inefficient, like refusing zippers. But it isn't a quirk. It's a community rule doing quiet arithmetic, and the arithmetic is brutal. Here's the mechanism. Amish households opted out of Social Security by religious conviction, written right into the IRS code, which is apparently a thing you can do. That means they skip the self-employment tax entirely, a rate of 15.3% on every dollar earned. They also carry no student loan debt, none, which for most of us reads like science fiction. Added up, and an Amish family saves an estimated 20 to 30% of its income before breakfast. Your Amish host hears the phrase student loan and slow blinks. He sets down the lantern. He writes it in the notebook with a pencil stub, the way you'd label a beetle you found in the sink. The point isn't that they're stingy. It's that the whole community agreed on the same rule, so the savings compound across everyone at once. No one's freelancing their retirement plan, which is basically the opposite of everything a financial app has ever told you. The church carries the sick, the barn raising carries the roof, and the missing 15.3% carries the difference. It's insurance, just made of people instead of premiums. Picture a black buggy rolling down a Pennsylvania road at 8 miles an hour. A pickup blasts past it, financed for 72 months, playing something loud. The buggy does not react. The horse does not have a monthly payment. That's the entire philosophy in one calm, clopping frame. And your host, hearing 72-month payment, blinks once more. Down goes the lantern. Into the notebook it goes, a mildly exotic insect he has no plans to keep. So the rule saves a fortune, and everyone follows it, which sounds like a happily ever after. Except rules only matter if breaking them costs something. So what happens to the person who says no, who buys the truck, who wires the house, and files the tax form? That's the real question, and that's Chapter 6. You watch a 13-year-old close his last school book forever. You probably figure that's just a quaint Amish thing, kids quitting early because farm life needs hands. Fair guess, but that's not the shape of it. This isn't a family whim or a shrug at learning. It's a rule the whole community agreed to and defends on purpose. The real mechanism is that education ends where the trade begins. Amish children receive formal schooling only through the 8th grade, a right upheld by the U.S. Supreme Court in Wisconsin versus Yoder in 1972, yet the apprenticeship starts immediately after. That means years of hands-on trade work before most American kids even walk into high school. While your average freshman is losing a fight with a locker, an Amish 14-year-old is framing a barn. Think about what that court fight actually meant. The state of Wisconsin said the boys had to stay in school. The parents said the plow was the classroom. 9 justices in Washington sided with the plow. So the 8th grade cutoff isn't neglect. It's a boundary the law now protects. Picture it on a 2-lane road. A gray buggy rolls along at 8 miles an hour, unbothered, while a lifted pickup roars past blasting a podcast about maximizing your credit score. The host in the buggy gives a slow blink. He sets down his lantern, pulls out a pencil stub, and writes credit score in a small notebook, the way you'd label a beetle you found in the sink and don't intend to keep. Then he keeps driving. And the strange part is the buggy kid is arguably ahead. He can build, weld, milk, and balance a small ledger by 16. He just did his schooling in reverse of everyone else, books first, then a decade of the actual job. Which raises the obvious question. If they can build a whole house by hand and skip high school entirely, why do they still refuse the power line running right past the front door? That answer is stranger than the schooling, and it's waiting for you in Chapter 7. Isn't the big Amish family just a quaint old habit? More kids because that's how they've always done it? That's the easy answer, and it's wrong. You probably picture it as a custom, a folksy preference for full dinner tables, basically Thanksgiving on a loop. The sharper truth is that the family size works like a rule, not a whim. Every child is a future farmhand, an heir, a small stake in the operation, which is a lot of pressure to put on a toddler. The family isn't just a family, it's a firm. Here's the number. The Young Center for Anabaptist and Pietist Studies pinned down in 2020. The average Amish family has 6 to 7 children. That matters because it means the land, the labor, and the money all stay inside the household instead of getting hired out. A commercial farm pays wages, rents equipment, and hires drivers. The Amish farm raises its own workforce at the dinner table and pays it in pot roast, which is a compensation package no HR department would approve. So when a corn operation crunches its payroll against a family with 7 kids old enough to bale hay, the family wins on cost before sunrise. That's the built-in advantage. Picture it out on a 2-lane road in Lancaster County. A pickup blows past with the radio going and a payment book in the glove box. Truck payment, insurance, the works. The Amish host gives that truck a slow blink, sets down his lantern and writes car payment in his little notebook with a pencil stub. He studies it a moment, the way you'd study a beetle you have no intention of keeping. Then he pockets the notebook. Meanwhile, the buggy just clops along beside the noise, owing nobody anything, 7 kids worth of free labor riding in the back. Calm. But if the whole system runs on children who eventually grow up, you hit the obvious problem. Those kids need farms of their own, and Pennsylvania, apparently, isn't making new dirt. So where does the next generation actually go when the home place runs out of room, which is exactly the squeeze we untangle in Chapter 8? So the kids grow up and need land, and Pennsylvania keeps not making more. You'd expect the answer to be a bank, the way it is for the rest of us. It isn't. You probably picture Chapter 8 as a quaint little Amish custom. Neighbors being nice, sharing tools, that sort of thing. And that's warm, but it undersells what's actually happening. The sharper truth is that this niceness runs on a rule, not a mood. It's a community system with a job to do, and the job is money. Here's the mechanism. In Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, each church district, they call it a GMA, quietly runs a lending pool among its own members. Young families borrow from it interest-free or nearly so, and they buy land and equipment without ever setting foot in a commercial bank. No credit check, no loan officer with a tie. Think about what that skips. A modern couple wanting a farm walks into a bank, gets asked for a credit score, and Eli sets down his lantern, slow blinks, and writes credit score in his little notebook, filing it beside the other insects. An Amish couple in the same spot asks their GMA. The money comes from people who will personally watch whether the farm succeeds. That's a stronger motivator than a spreadsheet in another county. Picture the whole thing from the road. A buggy rolling calmly past a car dealership blasting a payment plan jingle, the driver entirely unbothered. The dealership needs your monthly payment forever. The GMA just needs its money back once, from a neighbor it'll see at church on Sunday. One of those systems is designed to end. And it works, which is the genuinely strange part. Interest-free lending sounds like a fast way to go broke, and yet these districts have funded new farms for generations without collapsing. So how does a loan pool with no interest and no bankers avoid the one thing that kills every lender? People who simply don't pay it back. So you're back at that kitchen table, oil lamp flickering, watching him count $100 bills onto the hand-sewn tablecloth. Nobody chases him for the money because everyone at his wedding will know if he doesn't pay. That's the whole trick. The debt isn't backed by a bank. It's backed by every face he'll see on Sunday. He earns almost nothing on paper, and he just bought a farm with cash. Not because he found some secret, because he never spent his first dollar buying a life that looks good to strangers. You have the degree, the job, the credit score. He has the second farm. So the real question was never how the Amish stay rich. It's what you've been quietly buying instead, and who you were trying to impress.